The Adventures of Frank Race, starring Tom Collins. Many things were changed during the war. The face of the earth was altered, and the people of the earth changed. Before the war, Frank Race was an attorney, but he traded his law books for the cloak and dagger of the OSS. And when it was over, his former life was over too. Adventure had become his business. The Adventures of Frank Race.
New York in the spring, just after a rain, with the sun sneaking a look at you now and then. Everything glistened, particularly the girls in those transparent raincoats. I was walking right alongside one of them, a blonde who was putting ideas in my head, when...
Mr. Race! Frank Race! Hey!
It was Mark Donovan, coming in fast as usual. I crawled into his cab, a vehicle that looked as though it must have gone through the Battle of the Bulge.
I've been looking all over for you. Call come to the apartment from Intercontinental Maritime Underwriters. A guy named Chalmers Latham.
An interesting piece of news. Start beating those signals, Mark. A guy named Chalmers Latham. I remembered him from the Rotogravures. First family, good-looking, shoots golf along with the pros. A Frank Merriwell in business. He drew salary as an executive vice president in charge of claims. And at the moment, he wasn't happy.
I don't believe we've met before, Race.
I don't believe so.
I heard of you through McCormick, our chief adjuster. Attorney, aren't you?
That's right.
The OSS during the war, quite a lot of foreign service, decorated several times.
You've got me.
Might I ask why you prefer not to practice your profession?
Well, I got fidgety in courtrooms. It's a handicap. Irritates the judges.
I'd like to point out, Race, that the function of this office is to adjust claims, not to investigate them.
But you've had one come along that looks fuzzy.
Not one, two. Two freighters operated by the same firm. The claim in each case is for total loss.
How did they go?
Overdue and presumed lost. Frankly, they just disappeared, without traces. Ship, cargo, and crew.
Well, sounds like an interesting assignment.
As I just mentioned, our function is to adjust claims and, well...
You don't want to make a fuss.
You understand. Now, the claims may turn out to be perfectly legitimate. So I suggest that, on the surface, you make it apparent that you're not working for us. Pardon me a moment.
Right.
Yes? I'll put Mr. Nina on. No, wait a second. I'll talk to her out there. Excuse me a minute, Race.
Yeah, quite all right, Latham. He took at least 15 minutes. And when he came back, he kept moving around, smoking rapidly.
You free this evening, Race?
I could be.
I'd like to take you to Sally Deneen's for dinner.
Informal or white tie?
White tie. I'll pick you up at 8.
I left Latham's office and headed for the elevator, but I never quite got to it. The interception came in the shape of a paunchy personality with a pair of eyes that reminded you of grapes. Peeled grapes. His face was round and without guile, and he spoke with the voice of a choir boy.
We're taking the stairs.
Well, I'm not seeking exercise. You know, that's a long way down.
I said we're taking the stairs. You go moving your flippers and you'll pick up a crop of bruises.
I got the feeling I'd pick up more than that. Those orbs told me he'd been smoking a brand they don't advertise. We took the stairs.
Stay close to the buildings. And remember, one phony move and I'll plant a slug in there.
There were several cabs around, but no sign of Mark Donovan. We walked about 4 blocks to finally turn into a short blind alley, a loading dock. On hand were a couple of citizens who'd been fair game for any dragnet. One of them was an ordinary hood, but the other... Well, you remember the way a bootlegger used to dress when business was good? Slouch hat, double-breasted Chesterfield.
Hello, Race. My name's Jacklin. Eddie Jacklin.
Should that make me happy?
I'm not here to stall around. What'll you take to turn down that job for Intercontinental?
I might be able to answer that better if I knew what they intended to pay me.
Now you're doing the stalling.
Like I told you, Eddie, you don't have to offer him no dough. Just let me push him around a little.
Like this? Grapevines!
I heard you were pretty handy with that commando stuff.
Well, he could have been friendlier about things. Walked me several blocks without uttering a civil word.
I try to be friendly with people I do business with.
You may as well get it straight, Jacqueline. I'm not doing business.
I had an idea you'd say that, so I made plans.
With a .45 in your hand. I respect you.
Nemo, flag us a cab. All right, Race. Drift toward the street.
Jacqueline gave the cabbie an east side address, and we lurched away. Our flying start made me glance at the driver, and I had to swallow a grunt when I saw it was Mark. His eye in the mirror caught mine, and I got set for his play, and I wasn't long in coming. Getting a clear stretch ahead, he gunned the cab to about 50, then slapped on the brakes. I'd braced myself, and when Jacqueline and Nemo went forward, I grabbed both of them behind the heads and pushed hard.
Get him outside, Frank.
Get out, Jacqueline!
Roll your head, Frank. Roll your head.
I was conscious of a sickening splat, and we all sprawled on the pavement. Nemo and I came up together, and I went at him with the sharp edges of my hands. He took 2 or 3 and then broke away into camps.
Come on, Race. Let's get out of here. A fine fare you turn out to be. Wait for me, says the man, and that is the last I see him.
Well, if you'd been watching, you'd have seen me come out of that building with a gun barrel bruising my backbone.
I took 5 minutes, maybe, to snag me a cup of coffee.
How much coffee do you drink in a day?
This is only my 9th cup. Since noon, it is. Why don't you have some more?
Mark, do you know about a family named Deneen?
Oh, the big shots. Yeah, I know. Hauled them around once or twice. There is a girl that's a pip.
Do they own ships?
That's right, sure. The girl and her brother had a big court fight in 44. Hit all the headlines. Some kind of battle about running a company.
No, we weren't reading very many newspapers in 44.
What is cooking on all this, anyway?
Dinner. They're home this evening. On the way over, Latham had briefed me on the family, but at that, I wasn't quite prepared for the militant aunt who presided over the household. Miss Deneen's aunt, Carrie Farrell, must have been about 45. Her complexion had the look of freshly stirred oatmeal. She spoke in tones that seemed to be directed at someone behind you, about 50 feet behind you. Carrie's Mr. Farrell always seemed to be smiling, apologetically, as though he felt himself to be a traitor to his sex because of being her husband.
Race? Well, that's an odd name, isn't it? Has anyone ever told you that the race doesn't always go to the fleetest?
I'm afraid that doesn't quite make sense, Carrie.
Does to me. I'm sure it does to Mr. Race. Come along. Sally isn't here yet, but we won't wait for her.
We were dabbling with a chocolate souffle, and I was wondering why Latham had bothered to set this up when she appeared in the doorway. You know, the loveliness of some women affects you gently, like the sampling of fine wine. With Sally Deneen, it reached out and took you by the lapels and said, "Look at me." She wasn't a blonde. She didn't need to be, not with that coloring, not with that thick, dusky hair. Her eyes were large and sultry. When they settled on me, I wasn't conscious of where I was.
Sorry I'm late, everybody. Hello, Chalmers. What have you been doing lately?
Fretting about your ships?
Oh, bother the ships.
Yeah, that simply amazes me, the way you all accept the situation so resignedly.
What else can we do, Chalmers? None of us here knows a thing about shipping.
Bob does, or should. By the way, Sally, where is your brother? I thought he'd be here tonight.
With me here? Don't be silly, darling.
Now, I wanted to see him because, well, I'm going to be frank with you. I hate to have to do it, but I'm forced to investigate the loss of those 2 vessels.
What?
And we'll keep it as quiet as possible.
And I gather that Mr. Race will do the investigating.
Yes.
Well, whatever you think best, darling. As Uncle Matt said, we know very little about shipping.
Nice dinner, Latham. I enjoyed it.
What did you think of them?
Interesting people. Do they share ownership of the company?
Sally and Auntie and Brother Bob. Farrell is in only to the extent of marriage.
How are they financially?
I'm not sure. You see, Race, I have an emotional interest in their affairs. And
I caught that.
How soon can you leave for San Francisco?
That's where the ships are?
Most of them.
Well, I'll be phoning for a reservation while I change my clothes.
Good. And Race, there'll be a $1,000 bonus if you make good use of that discretion of yours.
Frisco and fog. According to all reports, they're like bread and butter, particularly in the spring. So the sun was a newly minted gold piece. The only cloudiness visible was in my taxi driver's face as the car in front of us made a left turn from a right-hand lane. The cabbie dropped me at a hotel that matched the weather, the Mark Hopkins. And while I was smudging the register, I heard myself being paged. I signaled the bellhop, and he led me to the bar. Sally was there.
Surprise, Mr. Race?
Frankly, yes.
What will you have to drink?
A bourbon and soda, please.
Since you'd like to know, I wheedled your destination out of Chalmers, Latham.
What did you use to get out here? A rocket?
Well, I imagine I caught an earlier plane. I trust I don't look travel-worn.
You look... Well, if you don't know how you look, you're not the girl I think you are.
As a compliment, I'm afraid that one is tinged with cynicism.
No, I'm not being cynical. I may get that way later, but I'm not now.
I like you, Race. You mind?
What about Latham?
Will you believe me?
If you level.
I'm leveling, Race. Chalmers doesn't know I'm not interested. It isn't my fault.
That's good enough for me. Let's drink to the new cities, new acquaintances.
Let's drink to Oz.
I spent the next couple of days kicking around and asking questions about the missing ships. And I drew a lot of blanks. Then I ran into Sally again at night in the lobby of the hotel.
Tell me, Race, have you been avoiding me?
I've been circulating around. That's the way I earn a living.
Aunt Carrie and Uncle Matt flew out. I'm having dinner with them. Why don't you join us?
Here at the hotel?
No. And we have a house out here that we keep open the year round. St. Francis Wood. How about dinner?
Oh, I'll enjoy that. But I'm afraid I'll be a little late. See, there's a ship in the harbor I want to have a look at. The Hackensack Victory.
Oh, that's one of ours.
I know. Maybe you'd like to go along.
Couldn't we make it tomorrow?
Let's make it tonight. Think of what it'll do for your appetite.
You're a very persistent man.
The Hackensack Victory is an exact counterpart of the 2 ships that disappeared. You don't have to come if you don't want to.
I'll come.
We found the Hackensack Victory with the gangplank down. When we reached the deck, I led Sally aft to a cabin door that bore a brass plate, identifying the quarters as belonging to the master.
The captain may not like this.
Don't happen to know him, do you?
To the best of my knowledge, I've never even seen the man.
What do you want?
We just thought we'd like to have a look around.
We've got no time for sightseers.
Captain, this is Miss Sally Deneen, one of the owners.
Now, how would I know that?
Maybe you'd like to see a driver's
I'm
license.
not interested. I'm sorry, but you'll have to go ashore.
I think we better do that, Race. He's perfectly within his rights.
All right, Sally. If you say so.
Oh, I'm starved. Wonder how far we'll have to walk to find a cab.
You're starved, and I'm curious.
What about?
The world is full of sounds, mostly words. If your mind is watching while your ears listen, it's surprising what people will tell you without intending to.
Have I told you anything, Race? Without intending to?
You didn't want me aboard that ship.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
You know, there's something funny about it. About the master's cabin. They've been redecorating it. Did you notice it? All that cluster of wood shavings on the floor and the smell of paint. But maybe you didn't notice.
Not particularly.
They've been doing something to the ceiling beams. Now, why would they do that?
Race, why don't you forget your job for tonight?
She stopped as she said this. So I stopped, too.